Jim. I would like to ask a question about the true unsung hero of the Dresden Files, our old friend Bob. Now, there are two versions of Bob, one in the short-lived television series, but you also made some other changes and mentioned that there were some things that you kind of liked a little bit different. But then there's the Bob of the books that we all fell in love with. Can you tell us a little bit about Bob, the inspirations, and what would you do if you ever had the chance to bring it back to another medium? Would you ever merge the two versions of Bob? Because the television Bob in his own right was interesting, as well as the Bob that we all know and love in the books.
Yeah, he was interesting. Terrence Mann kind of sold me on Bob before it was all said and done, because he did such a good job on him, and I wish they'd gotten to do some of his story a little bit more. Plus Terrence Mann in person, really great guy. Seriously, good guy. As far as where Bob the Skull came from, he's an inside joke between me and my writing professor. After I'd written a couple of chapters of the Dresden Files, and she'd said, you can do it, this will sell. I don't know if it'll be the first thing you sell, but this is of saleable quality. I said, oh, well, she says, what are you going to do next? I'm like, well, I'm planning on having this scene where he goes to consult with, he's got like this consulting spirit that lives in his skull. Or he's got this consulting spirit that he talks to, and at that point I didn't know what he was going to be like. He's got this consulting spirit that when he needs specialist information, he goes to his consultant, so that I can get the information about how magic works to the reader. And she's like, yeah, that's great. As long as go ahead and go with that, as long as you don't make the character a talking head. And a talking head is writer speak for a character who just shows up and dumps out information and then vanishes again. And the typical guy that they have for that is like the professors that always showed up in the old 50s science fiction pulp movies. And they said, as you know, Bob, the chemical composition of, and there was always, you know, as you know, Bob. But if Bob already knew that, then why is the guy telling him that? So I decided to make a literal talking head named Bob, who was also named after an NPC named Bob the Elf in a Warhammer campaign that I ran. So Bob the Elf kind of morphed into Bob the Skull, and kind of kept the same voice, you know, Bob the Skull, and is basically my inner pruried 15-year-old with no checks or balances.